Let's go!
I got a spot on my chin, so I'm just using the doll again. Hello? No, seriously, giant spot on my chin. I look like Sergeant fucking Slaughter. So anyway, today we're talking about online games. Industry bullshit seems to be cyclical. You may listen to some of today's video and think, well, this is nothing new. No, it's not new, just like shitty PC ports aren't a new concept, but just became the shit du jour of the video game industry, what was it, last year? This stuff just comes in waves, and the recent wave I've been noticing is a whole bunch of online-centric games designed only for online being completely fucked online. So that's what we're talking about today. Boom, 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 boom. I was going to do a thing where I'd start matchmaking in Sker Ritual and see if it actually joins me to a game before I finished writing this script. However, I cannot do that, as Sker Ritual is so utterly and completely fucked up that it can't even start matchmaking right now, let alone finish the fucking thing. Sker Ritual is the latest in an unforgivable line of online-centric games that have completely shattered their launch windows by simply not bloody working. Just straight up failing to operate like the quintessential picture of a defective product, a term nobody else uses enough in this bloody industry. When you boot up a game and you get this though. Defective product is truly the perfect descriptor. Oh, matchmaking's working again, for a given definition of working. Can you believe I was excited about this? I even bought the deluxe edition like a fucking chump. I legit feel like a bad person for that because deluxe owners can make their character scream on command in a game already full of whistles, shrieks and other noises set at a pitch seemingly designed to assassinate autistic people.
Speaking of which, hi, this is Z-Manzilla, the co-editor here, and for your benefit, said autistic people, here's a little content warning. I'm about to play a sample of that audio, right? And I just want to give you ample time to turn down volumes and pull the earbuds away from your ears, you know, all that nice stuff. All right, now, I'm going to count down from 5. You ready? Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, yeah. Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
Shut the fuck up!
Sker Ritual is a fry of a smaller size when compared to some of the games truly fucking around lately, but for me it sure was a breaking point. I liked the original Maid of Sker, and for some deeply strange reason I admired the stupidity of turning a relatively straightforward indie horror into a version of COD Zombies that didn't have Activision stink all over it. But this thing is the very definition of half-baked, not just because its online stability is egg-like in its fragility, but because it's so unbelievably ineptly designed as if the creators were completely out of their element with a game of this nature.
Forget it, Donnie, you're out of your element.
It's so poorly balanced that it's more rewarding to quit a game and abandon your team, since you can cash out with all your XP at any time and not bother with the entirety of a long, tedious series of undynamic objectives. Plus, if the host quits first, or the game otherwise disconnects, which it'll do a lot, you get nothing. So ditching a team is literally incentivized more than playing properly. That's just one example of the game being so fundamentally wrong that it didn't have a fucking prayer. But the extremity of its failure, matchmaking has been going on for about 9 minutes now, has thrown into sharp relief the utter fucking state of online games now. Earlier this year, Helldivers 2 launched in such a state that despite being infinitely more competently made than Sker Ritual, was even more unplayable. It simply couldn't matchmake at all most of the time, and when it did, it was laggy, unstable, and prone to outright crashing. Much of this was excused as the developers not being prepared for such a huge player base at launch, though personally I maintain that's not the entire story and it doesn't explain the tech issues unrelated to player base. Many people were nonetheless forgiving of Helldivers 2. So was I. No, before you remember my absolutely scathing review where I controversially gave it a super low score and everyone said I was being unfair, let me assure you I was more forgiving towards Helldivers 2 than I am with most games. I gave it 2 weeks. 2 weeks to sort its shit out, and it had not improved at buggering all. So, what is a critic to do when they have to review what is in front of them, and what's in front of them is fucking shit? Wait some more? Okay, how long? 3 weeks? 4? Indefinitely? When Cyberpunk 2077 came out, should we have all waited 3 years before we pointed at it and said, that's fucking broken, mate? I mean, do I just do what some people always expect me to do and simply review a game based on hype and the promise that one day it might be good? Because brother, let me tell you, if we all reviewed games based on hype and promise, Anthem would be the highest rated game of all time. And let's forget critique. I am a customer like any other. I bought Helldivers 2, the deluxe edition, because I'm a fucking chump. The nature of my job means I often have to move on from game to game before long, and that's me in a privileged position. There are other people whose jobs give them very limited amounts of free time at all. So during my best window to play a game I bought, I couldn't. Solo mode is untenably fucking awful due to zero balancing, matchmaking was fucked, and the constant online connection it required sure as shit wasn't connected on its end half the time. Those 2 weeks trying to forgive Helldivers 2 sucked. So really, I don't regret being as harsh as I was. I can't praise the imaginary.
Imagine a story.
Hilariously, you don't even need to be an online game to offer players a busted online experience in one of my favourite examples this year of triple failure. Oh, that don't work. The aggressively mediocre Suicide Squad partook of that whole play early scam where buying a more expensive version lets you access it a few days ahead of launch. Yeah, except it required an online connection to do that, and the goons at Warner Brothers were distinctly not online, literally failing to deliver what it sold. Fucking beautiful. While nowhere near as bad as the other examples, the really rather good Outlast Trials still suffered from a lot of matchmaking issues at launch. It just took a lot longer to find games than it should have been, and like with Sker Ritual and Helldivers 2, playing it alone was a drawn out and unenjoyable drag. Really good game that, a lot more consistent with its online, but absolutely did itself no fucking favours. They say you only get one first impression. Unless you launched with enough hype and big publisher backing to have an army of pre-installed fans forgiving you, that remains true for a lot of games. And lately, the first impressions they're giving off during launch windows, by far the most crucial time for building a strong lasting player base, are terrible. In such a competitive market, the last thing any game needs is players losing interest and bailing on the experience after just a few days, but they're honestly leaving players with no choice. I mean, about 10 minutes ago, Sker Ritual full-on kicked me for inactivity when all I was doing was waiting for it to find me a game. I wasn't the inactive one! And what, am I meant to take that as a fucking encouraging sign? No, I'm going to uninstall it, boot Final Fantasy X back up, and have an actual nice time.
Now, do you want to hear the story of the shoe puff? Ah, man. I fucking love that old guy. No.
When matchmaking is this bad, tragic irony is the likely outcome, as by the time it's fixed, there won't be enough players left to make matches with. A game like Sker, let's face it, ain't gonna be the next Overwatch. For many online games, that week or two after launch is literally as good as it's ever gonna get, and they're blowing it. Forget for a moment the consumer end and just think about how sad that is for the game to only have the biggest spotlight when it's at its very worst. Relatable. Wait, I mean, no game needs a launch day support as much as an online multiplayer game, but lately no game is less deserving of launch day support than an online multiplayer game. The genre's really burning through its fucking trust. If we're now at a point where it's okay to be fucking unplayable on day 1, day 2, week 1, week 2, then I really couldn't advise anyone buy an online game until it's been out for at least a month. Don't buy games at launch. It's an old adage. Adage. Adage?
ADAG. It's a silent E.
One truly encapsulated by another quote, coined by my old stablemate Total Biscuit. We do not pre-order. And oh, how true it is. Now this attitude toward buying brand new games is a very, very old one. Not quite as old as my career, which has gone on far too seriously long enough, but it's only a few years behind. Games being broken at launch has been an increasing problem ever since what I dubbed patch culture grew throughout the very late 2000s and early 2010s. Oh, Sker Ritual literally just gave up on matchmaking, it just stopped. It just stopped. Anyway, patch culture was the industry's response to the growing connectivity of games as broadband became more widespread and online gaming therefore became more viable. This of course allowed games to be updated post-launch, which like most new things in the game industry started out as a great idea that benefited everybody but was soon brutally adapted to suit the deadline-happy, resource-frugal needs of big publishers. Rather than finish a game and iron out any unforeseen bugs post-launch, it became horribly routine to launch games in woefully broken states because going gold and claiming to be ready for release was more important than actually being ready for release. And the only reason I'm using past tense and not present tense is because this is historical context and not a description of what's still going on. For a time, the day one patch was considered a big deal, rightly maligned. It was like an immediate epidemic. The game I always remember as embodying that plague of patch culture is Techland's Dead Island. In fact, I believe that's the game that caused me to coin the term. Dead Island required a massive patch on launch day to essentially complete its development, and even then it was buggy as all fuck. I mean, it's a Techland game. Ultimately, the game industry has gotten way too fucking comfortable with the release it now, patch it later approach, which of course led to a medium full of unfinished live service games that offer skeletal products with a roadmap of updates. But at least the games I'm thinking of there were all still playable to some notable degree. You know, Street Fighter V was fucking Spartan at launch, but what was there could be accessed to its fullest extent. The games inspiring today's rant are borderline unplayable, balanced entirely around largely inaccessible online play, with connections too unstable to provide an acceptable experience even when it can matchmake properly. And here's where I have very limited sympathy for even the most sympathetic case. You can be surprised by how many players you have, like Helldivers 2's developers were, but there is still no excuse for being completely unprepared for downtime. There's no excuse for not wondering what players will do if they buy your game and can't bloody play it the way they're meant to. Because these are online games. Shit goes wrong for 1,000 reasons. No game can stay online 100% of forever, and if you're not providing anything to keep your players in your ecosystem at times like this, you're doing bad fucking business. I dare say if Helldivers 2 had a campaign mode or just made suitable adjustments for solo players, I'd have been so much more forgiving of it. If there was something to do in Sker Ritual other than stare at a matchmaking screen, it would still be shit. But you know, hell, Sker and Outlast are particularly glaring since they're literally spun off from intensely single-player horror games. Whatever's going on lately to make balked online launches the fuck-up du jour of the gaming space, I don't have an answer for it, but while offering more solo content or just better solo balancing isn't a fix, it's at least a salve to the problem of these games being functionally useless, literally unable to serve the one purpose they've been sold to serve, because in comparison, it doesn't really matter how glitchy a game like the notorious Cyberpunk 2077 was at launch, because you could still play it and play it a lot. The glitchy, busted, crash-prone single-player game is always less broken than an otherwise perfectly polished online game that can't get online. Also, I'm just gonna stop looking forward to games. It's clearly not working out. I'm terrified to be too excited for the Elden Ring DLC, because the moment I get hyped, that's when From Software puts fucking Bubsy in it. Thank God for me.
Ooh.